Welcome to Diasporaa, the show where we share the remarkable stories of immigrants from the Indian subcontinent. I'm your host, Aditya Mehta. Each week, we sit down with individuals who have made the journey over and explore their experiences, their triumphs, their challenges. We delve into their unique perspectives on adapting to a new culture while staying connected to their roots. Today, we're joined by Somnil Das. He's originally from Calcutta or Kolkata. While in India, he went to XLRI, which is a prestigious educational institution. He was also in the Indian Army, and we're going to talk about those experiences later in the show. He moved to Toronto 8 years ago and then recently moved to Nashville with Amazon. I know Somnil from my days at Amazon when he was my first supervisor. We launched many last mile delivery stations together before we both eventually moved to different teams. So, with that, let's dive into this week's conversation. So, Somnil, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Eddie. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I try to give context to my listeners who are a mix of local North Americans as well as people from the subcontinent and explain what different cities in India would be if they were an American city. So, what would you compare Kolkata to? What is the closest American city that resembles Kolkata, in your opinion?
I think it resembles more about Europe, old British
Yeah.
cities, nothing compared with North America.
No.
I think there's a lot of resemblance you will find with London because that used to be the British capital till
Yeah.
1911
Yeah.
before it moved to Delhi.
Yeah.
So a lot of the buildings, even we have got the tram, that
Yeah.
electric tram which started 100 years back, it's now a heritage.
Yeah.
So it resembles like some of the, if you go to the heart of the city, the buildings and all, they are very European style.
Yeah.
So hardly you come across those kind of architecture in North America, right? And
Yeah.
very congested, like very dense.
Yeah.
So I will compare it more with London or any of the old European cities
Yeah.
which are there.
I've been to Calcutta a few times. I find the pace of life is a little slower compared to the most of the other metros in India. Obviously, that's how Bengali culture is also. I think
Yep.
Bengalis enjoy life more. And just for our listeners, the eastern part of the country, and specifically Bengal, is very culturally sophisticated. So a lot of the poets, actors, directors, they come from Bengal. Actresses, especially women, are very pretty. And Bengal is a unique state in India because it was a much bigger state and half of it is now Bangladesh. So the British partitioned it in 1905, I believe, and it was split into a Hindu section and a Muslim section. And the Hindu section stayed with India. And that's why it's called West Bengal, even though it's in the east of the country. So, what were your days like growing up in Calcutta? And how was your schooling like? How was your family life like?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, I've been born and brought up in Calcutta. I lived in the heart of the city, a place called Lake Gardens, which is in the southern part of the Calcutta. Now a very busy place. I studied in a school which was one of the, I'll say, pretty good, best school in Calcutta, South Point. And like we have got no Nobel laureate from my school, so I'll say one of the best.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and then I grew up in a very densely populated area. We didn't have playgrounds, and also I used to play a lot of cricket on the road, if you
Yeah.
ask me, and a lot of cycling, biking. I love outdoors. I used to swim a lot. Anything outdoors, I was there. And then family life was good. I have a younger sibling. By the time I reached age of 16, certain things changed in my family because of which I had to start working early in my life. So, and I started actually working from the age of 16 in Calcutta. You won't believe one of my first job was to give out pamphlets next to the metro station, which
Yeah.
was one of the Calcutta was one of the first cities in India to get a underground railway system.
Yeah.
We called it the metro rail.
Yeah.
So yeah, like we used to do that and get our pocket money. And then eventually I did my college from Calcutta. I grew up there and I met my wife there. And eventually I went to military where my life started, my professional career started. So overall, if you can say till the age of 21, 22, I was in Calcutta.
And where was your first posting in the military?
Yeah, that's a good question. I got commissioned from the Indian Army in March 2001, almost 24 years now. And I got commissioned to the Corps of Ordnance. But Ordnance being a supply chain corps, right? They are
Yeah.
basically taking care of the supply chain of Indian Army. I think this is the kind of good practice in the military. I think some of the corporates have also borrowed. Like if you are going to a supporting kind of a uh, department, you need to first go to the field and see how things are there, right, in
Yeah.
operations. So
Yeah.
we had to compulsory go to the field, and my first posting was in in Siachen Glacier.
Wow.
So one of the highest battlefields in the world, people say. And I lived there for almost, like, I climbed the glacier a couple of times because of different reasons. Like, we had a lot of weather casualties. There was a war which was at place taking place every day. There was bombing and shelling and things are going on around.
Yeah.
But it was like I was 22 and pretty exciting time of my life. And say I did this, done that, and saw things very closely. A lot of maturity happened in my life very early because of all these experiences, I can say.
Yeah. Um, so for our listeners, Siachen is a glacier which is at it's sort of a intersection where the Indian part of Kashmir and the Pakistan occupied Kashmir and the Chinese occupied Kashmir that they claim they all meet at Siachen, right? And so it's a perennial flashpoint, and it's one of the most, not just the highest battlefield, but one of the most challenging environments that you could be posted
Yeah.
at, let alone be actively engaged in a war at. So how long did you spend in Siachen?
So initially, I was managing a forward post for like almost 4 months, right? You're supposed to stay not more than 3 months at a stretch because of the weather. The weather is very
Mm,
harsh. Like, you were staying at
yeah.
an altitude which is almost 18, 19, 20,000 feet sometimes, right?
Wow.
And the oxygen is very rarefied. I'll give you an example. Like, if you want to tie up your shoelaces, you will feel breathless. It's that less oxygen, and your
Wow.
body needs to acclimatize. So that's why. But we had some weather issues because of which we couldn't move out. So initially, I stayed for 4 months, and then again, I climbed the glacier. This time, I managed the logistic base for another 3 months. And then the third time, I climbed glacier with two journalists who were visiting from the United States. They were part of Outside Magazine. Actually, they interviewed me. It's there in the February 2002 issue of Outside Magazine. You can
Yeah.
find out. And I climbed with them again and went to the forward logistic base, and then we came back. So you just cannot fly into a glacier, right? Because of the high altitude, you need to,
Yeah.
every 1,000 feet you gain, you have to acclimatize for a couple of days. Otherwise, you try to develop pulmonary edema or cerebral edema, which is very fatal. So that's why people have to walk, and it's a very lengthy process. Like, it takes for 12 days, 14 days, 15 days. Like, it took me 21 days to reach my forward post when I started climbing for the first time.
Wow.
So I started from 12,000 feet, and then we went up to almost 20,000
Wow.
in 21 days. Yeah.
A fun anecdote. The first time I saw Somnil, I noticed immediately that he still has a military walk. So he walks like he has a 20-pound backpack and he's marching. Very purposeful and very, yeah, purposeful would be the right word. So I still remember, I think it was DVC 6. It was my first week launching that station with Stanley, and you had come to visit from out east. So pretty, and I think you asked me what time is the first wave, and I didn't know what a wave was because it was like my second day or something. But good memories. After Siachen, what were the some of the other interesting places that you spent time at with the army?
Yeah. I actually spent 2 years, like 1 year in the Siachen Nubra Valley. And then I don't know whether you guys have, like, a lot of Indians don't know this place. And maybe because of the movies, they know there's a lake called Pingongsu Lake, which is there like on 13,000 feet in the Himalayas, right? On the Karakoram range. So I spent a good amount of time there, like almost 6 to 8 months. It's a beautiful lake. It's like a 150-kilometer lake, which is like 1/3 in India, 2/3 in China. So around 50-kilometer portion is in India. And the best part of the lake is the water is brackish. It's salty water
Oh,
at that altitude. Yeah. So there's no hardly there's any marine life there, but nature at its best, I'll say, breathtaking view. And then I actually moved out from there, and I got posted in Calcutta, back in Ordnance. I started my logistics career, supply chain career there with the military. I
yeah,
spent good amount of time there. My elder son was born, and then I moved from there to, again, this time to Jammu. Jammu is the capital, I think, the summer capital of that time, the J&K
yeah,
state.
yeah,
So I spent a good amount of time there, and then almost spending 8 years in the military, I decided to leave and test new waters in the corporate sector.
yeah. I think in the US especially, companies love hiring veterans because they're disciplined, they follow orders, they work hard. Is there a similar mindset in corporates in India that they like hiring people from the armed forces?
I'll say there are where there people have hired and they have got results, but a lot of, like, I'll say, majority of the corporate sector in India is naive about the potential of military personnel.
Hmm.
I don't know why, because of various reasons, but I think it's picking up. Lately, I hear a lot of corporations are encouraging hiring its veterans, and they should, because you have a trained manpower, right? And they have
Yeah,
been they have been in situations which you cannot imagine, right?
yeah,
In corporate, things will be looking like a child's play for them to
Yeah.
start with, although it's not all the time. There are different challenges, there are intellectual challenges they have to go through, but still, leadership qualities you will find in them, a lot of good
Yeah.
leadership qualities. So that's
Yeah.
why I think during my time, there was, when I left, it was late 2000, like it was around 2008, and I did my MBA after that. I went to XLRI Jamshedpur. I decided to upgrade my skills before I ventured because I had no idea how corporate world was.
Yeah.
Okay, being in the military, I was in a very shielded place where things were very straightforward, very disciplined oriented. You tell a thing, things happen,
Yeah.
right? So I had to upgrade my skills. So I spent some time there, and then I went to the corporate sector, and then I started my life with a corporation called MHI, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. They were having a joint venture with Larsen Toubro, so I started from there as a at a greenfield project.
Okay. Interesting. For our listeners, tell us more about Jamshedpur as a city.
Oh, I love Jamshedpur. Like it was, I'll tell you, after working 8 years in the military, going back to college was really fun.
Yeah.
It was a different life where people, like if you see them, and everybody actually in these institutions, they have worked for 4 or 5 years at least. But it's a different life, different culture, and as a city, I love it.
Yeah.
It's not very far from Kolkata. I used to actually drive. It used to take me 5.5 hours door to door. And it's like you have got hills. If you like hills, you've got nature. Okay, good food is there, right? If you are a Bengali, definitely you have got a lot of choices there.
Yeah.
And also, if you like food from Bihar, Jharkhand, that area, I think that's a good place to be. And people are nice, and it's not a very expensive city, but it has everything, I think.
Yeah.
And Tatas have made it big because it's
Yeah.
also called Tata Nagar.
And
Yeah,
Jamshedpur is named after Jamshed Tata, who was the original of the Tata group. My dad is actually born in Jamshedpur
awesome,
because
good to know.
my grandma's side of the family Gujaratis, but they live in Jamshedpur since many years. So my grandma spoke fluent Bengali. My dad understands a lot of Bengali, which I discovered very recently myself.
Nice.
I've never been to the state of Jharkhand, but I've always heard great things about the city. I have another military related question for you. India and Pakistan split up. It was basically the same armed forces, which were split into two countries. Why is there such a big cultural difference between the two, where our army, our armed forces are, they're much more, I would say, disciplined and keeping in line with their scope of work, versus in Pakistan, where the army plays an outsized role in the politics of the country. So, why did Pakistan go that way, but India did not, in your opinion? It's a very macro question.
No, it's a very good question, interesting question. Happy you asked me. And I have thought about it. If you ask me previously, like in the military when I was there, and one of the reasons I quit, I will tell you why, because it didn't make sense, right? What are we doing? We're just fighting, right? So it looks very like at a very high level, it looks like no, it's not the solution, right solution. So to understand the politics, we were divided at 1947 by the British to fight a war. And it's all started from there, right?
Yeah.
And culturally, if you ask me, there is not much of a difference in terms
Nope.
of culture means food, habit,
Yeah.
right? Language. Like I see people who are from Pakistan here, they speak Punjabi,
Yeah.
not Urdu, and they are fluent in that. And you cannot make out either they're from India or somewhere else the way they speak
Yep.
Punjabi, right?
Yeah.
So I think the problem here is political. Like the people, the foundation was made in a way when it started all over, and we succumbed to that. The saddest part is we succumbed to that, and we are still fighting.
Yeah.
You look at the US and Canada, they have a 5,000 kilometer border,
Yeah.
right? Didn't they fight a war? They fought a war hundreds of years back. Are they still fighting? No.
Yeah.
What has happened 100 years back? Why are we fighting now?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. I don't think we are mature enough as nations to think about that, especially Pakistan, because the way constitutions have been carved, right? Indian army doesn't have that power to overthrow a government. The
Yeah.
constitution doesn't give it. But in Pakistan, the way it was carved, it gives them the power and they abuse it.
Hmm.
They abuse it, and every time the military thinks that, see, if you give one department of the government that much of power, they are
Yeah.
going to misuse it, right? And it's all people dependent. You don't
Yeah.
have any checkpoint. So there have been things, and it's not just only Pakistan. There are a lot of other countries, I'll say, which where things have happened like that because the military gained excessive power
Yeah.
and they overthrew the government and took over. I think in Burma or somewhere it's happening right now, right?
Yeah.
Myanmar. So I think it's all started from there, and that's why it's happening. And even if you like, I hear a lot of good things about Imran Khan from my Pakistani friends here, who say that he's like Modi, he's trying to do things, but the elements who have power, they will not let him come, or they will
Yeah.
not let anyone do that because their agenda is war. And trust me, if you are fighting a war, you can do a lot of things unaccounted for. Okay, and that's a place to make money. Everything is boiling down there. The
Yeah.
interest is at the end of the day very pecuniary. It is all money minded. It is all to make sure that we have a destabilization so that poor remains poor and rich they rob them. And in those countries, you see the variation. I heard that Pakistan, I hear the news, they don't have rations to feed their citizen. So
Yeah.
sad, right? But
Yeah.
ultimately, before 1947, it was one nation. It was
Yeah.
all one nation.
Well, a follow-up question before we go into our first break. Do you feel that as the years have passed and as India has grown, it is way less obsessed with Pakistan than it used to be, whereas Pakistan continues to be more obsessed with India?
I absolutely agree, especially with the current government, which is in power for the last 15 years now. I think you must have heard the prime minister saying that we don't have to bother about them. They will be bothered about themselves and bothered more about us. Why should we bother? Right?
Hmm.
We have a big nation. We have a very talented nation. We
Yeah.
have got a lot of talented people in India. The main problem is population. That's it. You
Yeah.
control that, you have everything there, right? You've got mountains, you've got deserts, you've got coastal area,
Yeah.
you've got everything there. A lot of natural resources and a lot of talented people in terms of intellect, in terms of skills.
Yeah.
But because of that, I think just like that, like as
I
I said,
after living in this part of the world for 7 years, when I go back to India, the scale is really evident. How big the country is, how much is going on, how it's growing so quickly. There was a time when if there was a $1 billion company, you would know the name. There were so few. And now there's startups and companies worth billions and billions of dollars. I've never even heard the name. So the country has gone into a whole different league, I feel, especially the last 10, 15 years. And I think it's now shifted its focus to other challenges and other problems than what it used to back, say, in the 90s, right? So, on that note, let's go into our break. And then when we return, we'll talk about Somnil's move to Canada. So, stay tuned for these messages. Welcome back to Diaspora on KKNW, where we share interesting stories of first generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent. Today we're talking to Somnil Das, Amazonian, and also my first supervisor, which we're gonna go into a little bit later. Somnil, at what point did Canada come across as an option for you, and what was the driving factor that made you consider moving abroad?
again, great question. So I, after quitting the military, like I did my post graduation, and then I started working right in the corporate sector. I worked a good amount of like 6 years or 7 years or so, and then I realized that, and I worked in three different companies because if you ask me why, one was a personal reason because my mom was going through a very bad health at that time, and the place where I was there in Gujarat, Surat, we didn't have good doctors, right? So I had to
Yeah,
move to Hyderabad. So that was one of the reason I moved and changed my job. But after working for 7 years in the corporate sector, I realized that it's not just talent they're looking for. The biggest tragedy in our country is there are so many talented people, but if you see the people who are enjoying the fruits of labor, it's not just their talent. There are other things. So you need someone on your hand, to have your and have their hand on their head.
yeah,
There is a lot of nepotism which goes on. There's a lot of, you're from this culture, you're from that state,
yeah,
or you're from my people, and then it's not the talent at the end of the day. It's just
yeah. A
some
lot of
kind of a favor which
externalities.
doing. Yeah. So that is something which I detested, right? And I thought, what am I doing here? Like, at the end of the day, even if I work hard, it's not going to give me any results. It will give me some results, but not what I'm desiring for, right? And me and my wife, like we are more like friends, and I'm grateful to her that she has been there throughout my life. Like we know each other from grade 11, right?
Yeah,
And from the age of 16, she was my best friend and still like my very good friend here in my life. We share a lot of things like friends. We discussed, we debated a lot, and then the idea came up like, okay, let's try something outside because I was in touch with my friends, right? And that time, by that time, internet was pretty much full-fledged. You're getting more information about life in abroad, how things are
yeah,
happening. You're watching videos, you're talking to people, right? You're seeing things real time, and that gave me some confidence to venture and test the waters outside. And if you ask me one thing in my life which I've always done, I'm a risk taker. I love taking risk, calculated risk, of course,
yeah,
and so does my wife as well. She has been supporting me a lot in that area.
yeah,
And we started doing a lot of research, and eventually I filed for my permanent residency from India for Canada, and within a year I got it.
yeah,
And eventually in 2015, I landed in Canada with two suitcases, and that's
yeah.
it.
Yeah. And now you look in your garage and see how much stuff you've
Oh
accumulated.
boy, I don't
Yeah.
look at my garage. I hate looking at it. It's so ugly.
Yeah, we came in 2018 with 6 suitcases, and then 4 years later, when we were moving to Seattle, we had a whole moving truck full of stuff, and we are like, When did we accumulate all this stuff?" And half of it. I mean, there's boxes which I still haven't opened up in 3 years
Yeah,
since moving
I
here.
can
So
imagine.
this was early days as far as express entry and the whole Indian move to Canada. I suppose it was much easier to do that than it is now, because now the
Yeah,
waits
I
are
didn't have
long,
the
right?
sorry, I didn't have the express entry. I was, I think, one of the last folks to have that federal skilled worker program. You
Oh,
need to have
okay.
certain points, the old
Got it.
system. So I have that certain points, and then you apply. And express entry right now, I think I've heard that it has become a bit challenging,
Yeah,
but nonetheless, people are coming. Right? Canada is a land of immigrants. They
yeah.
have to welcome people. Yeah,
I mean, now you have these immigration offices and consultants in the mall all over India. The flow of people coming is pretty crazy. When I came in, I would not see that many Indian or let's say brown faces, right, downtown Vancouver. But now you can see a lot more people of South Asian descent.
exactly.
And I think a lot of them have not had the kind of dream immigration experience that they had hoped to have or to them. A part of it is a small country, end of the day. 35, 40 million people is not a big country, especially by Indian standards. But I think also a lot of immigrants, they don't realize that there is a lot of legwork they have to do to get assimilated into the culture. And they end up moving to an area which has only everyone else is a new immigrant or everyone else is also Indian. Then they get disillusioned that where is Canada? And but I'm like, we actually haven't landed in Canada. You've just landed in mini India.
Yep.
So you have to step out and do those things. And we did that. We were very conscious of the fact that no one's going to reach out to you and spoon feed anything because you're a new immigrant. You have to go out and do all that legwork yourself. That really helped us a lot. How were the first few days and weeks? Did you have anything lined up for work, or it was just coming out cold with not knowing too many people and then figuring it out?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I land when I landed somewhere in the holiday season, right? And to be honest, I heard a lot of things, a lot of, I'll say, you go online, there are websites which where people give you feedback, and there are some horror stories also there where you feel you feel really scared. Like people come and they get robbed. People have no
Right.
job for a year, 1 year. They're sitting in Canada. They're new immigrant. They don't have jobs. So a lot of things go around. And after reading all this, is what I did is me and my wife we talked about it. We have been reading all this stuff like for almost a year before I arrived, right? A year before. So we started doing a lot of research, and on internet every day we will spend like a good amount of 2 3 hours researching stuff, going through stuff, reading
Yeah.
stuff. I in fact ordered 2 books from Amazon to read through. Me and my wife we read, right? So you can tell me that before I arrived in Canada, I was living in Canada in my mind for almost a year because I was always researching. I was in fact
Yeah.
listening to Canadian radio when I was driving to office. So I
Wow.
got through the internet.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how I prepared myself. And to be honest, when I landed, it really paid me off. I didn't have to wait for long. Within 7 days, I had a job in my hand. Okay,
Wow.
my lucky starts. And it was with a good company. It started with Ford Multimatic. That's a joint venture with a Multimatic company in Canada. And luckily, I got a job in my own field in supply chain warehousing. Right,
Wow.
so they were building a new plant there, and I have a lot of warehousing build warehouse in India as well. I built set up the entire logistics framework there. So I had SAP experience. I had a lot of things. All those experiences didn't go away.
Yeah.
So what I learned there is you have skills, right? Like normally people say a normal human being has 7,000 skills, right?
Mm.
6 to 7,000 skills. But every day or at work, you might be using only 900 to 1,000, maybe 1,500 at most, right? And those skills are transferable. Even if
Yeah.
you work any part of the world, those skills are transferable, and you have to convince that employer that you have that skill set to be
Right.
successful in the environment where they're looking for, right? And all these things helped me, and then that's how I started my journey. So I didn't really have to struggle too much. I was already in touch with employers before I landed in the country. I was already talking to them. They all wanted me to be in the country before they offered me a job. It looked
Yeah.
like the way they sounded. So
Yeah.
I was coming with a very positive intent, and it worked out well. Yeah.
That's great. I don't think I've heard anyone get a job that quickly who didn't move with as an employer move. In Canada, there's a term which I tell my listeners about called the survival job. And that's the job that you have to do to survive. And pay your bills until you get the job that you're actually qualified for. And I also had the similar approach that we're not going to do the survival job. We've not come here as economic migrants. We've come here to enjoy the quality of life,
Exactly.
and we're gonna make the most out of it. And I really feel I've had more than my fair share to eat at the buffet that is Canada. We've really lived the life there. I'm very glad that your move was it was that quick for you. At what point did you join Amazon, and how did that come about?
So my first job was, like, you can say, one of my dream jobs, right? So Ford had started making this beautiful supercars, they're sports cars. And at that time, I'm talking about 10 years back, it was like, at that time, $500,000 was the price of the car, right? And there was handmade, all carbon fiber body with Roush engine and all those stuff. And I was setting up their entire warehouse, their entire supply chain, the logistics framework and all.
Hmm.
And it was like, the biggest problem with the job was like, I was driving every day 1.5 hours up, 1.5 hours down. So it was in Markham and I used to stay in Brampton, right?
Yeah,
And I didn't want to move my family. They were pretty settled there. They were new.
yeah,
So I worked there for 6 months. And after driving, commuting for 6 months like that, I felt
yeah,
like, oh man, I'm not enjoying this commute. So let me start looking something nearby. And luckily that time, this new warehouse was Amazon was setting up in Brampton, which was like 15, 20 minutes away from my house.
yeah,
So I came to know, and there were some friends who I knew before they were working in Amazon. They also told me that, yeah, you can try. And then I tried and it worked out. And then I started my career there. So that's how
yeah.
it happened.
And I guess
But
that
yeah,
fulfillment center, not
that
last
was a
mile.
fulfillment center. Yeah, that was the first robotic fulfillment center in Canada, YYZ4.
Oh yeah, I remember. I think we did a tour there as well at some point when we
Yep,
were in visiting. Um,
exactly.
so um, and then at some point, I guess you joined Last Mile and built up the Canada team, which I was a part of. Since these are early episodes, I like asking this question to some of my guests so that my audience understands me better. What was your first impression of me, and how was it like working with me? And you can say bad things, I won't mind.
No, 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 no. I actually had a lot of good things from Karthik. And then we met on the interview
Yeah,
and I saw you there and everything. I don't judge people by looking at them for the first time. It's like
right,
over a period. I always believe that things happen when you experience things together. Then you know someone. That's how I feel it, right? So
right.
I think the experience in the launches which we had, Addy, brought me a lot of respect to your skills which you brought. And I liked how humbling you are with all this potential you have, but you're truly a humble guy, which really impressed me.
I appreciate that.
Correct? Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, I think all the launch experiences we went through, and initially I got to know you better, and we have become good friends, and I'm happy
yeah.
that I earned one.
So, couple of things on this. So, till date, that's the best team I worked for in Amazon. I went through my fair share of teams, and especially once the launches stopped, I was in several teams in a very short span of time. So this was, and it's probably the only team where I'm still in touch with all the people who are in the team, even today. And I talk to them, be it BK, be it Stanley, Rohan, all of these guys. And also, one thing you told me very early on, which I've kind of taken as a life lesson, is that leave the job in a better condition than you found it. And those words have always stuck with me. And I've kind of applied that in everywhere in my life. And right now, I'm running a property management company. And what we did is, after the summer busy season ended, I did like a lessons learned summit with my team. I used that to say, what are all the different processes we can do better? What are all the different customer touch points which we can enhance? And we, the last 3 or 4 months, just improving every aspect of the business. So that's something I learned at Amazon, and specifically in your team, which was very helpful to me in the long run. So I always appreciate that. Any particular achievements at Amazon that you're especially proud of?
Well, I think the gig which we did together was one of the most proudest thing which we did. We literally set up a new supply chain process across the entire country through the length and breadth. So I think that's something to really do. It does impress me when I look back.
Yeah.
Presently, also currently, the certain things I'm doing, which reasons I don't want to share here, but that's also
Sure.
pretty interesting and pretty great stuff.
Yeah. So, more context for our listeners. We went from 3 to 35 warehouses in what, 2 to 3 years flat. And there was one day, 29 September 2021, where we launched 3 warehouses. One was in Halifax, one was in Vancouver, and one was in Montreal. So, Quebec, it was a whole different story because it's like launching a new country, like you always would say, translating millions of things into French. But
French.
these stations were 7,000 kilometers apart, and our team, I think, seamlessly pulled off the launches of these stations, which are so. I remember everybody was just darting back and forth around the country, and like I'm still amazed that the team pulled off something that significant with
Remember,
such
there was
ease.
COVID at that time.
And there was COVID. I think I had people I worked with for 3-4 months, and I didn't know what their face actually looked like because we always had a mask on, and we were on the rare occasion there would be a COVID case on the construction floor. We would sweep the site overnight and then just be back at it the next day. One thing that I mention regularly on the show is how much Amazon is obsessed with safety. And there's a general impression that don't care about associates, but safety and the associate experience were front and center. And I tell people that you can launch a site without pretty much anything missing, except it cannot be a safety thing that's missing. It cannot be an associate experience thing that's missing. And we had to do what we had to do to make sure that those things are in place at launch. So yeah, those were some really fun times. I learned a lot. Even when I decided what to do next after Amazon, I wrote an Amazon style white paper for myself. And I said, this is my current state. This is my desired state. These are all the different scenarios. And then I took the impact of each scenario. Like, what is the immigration impact? What is the finance impact? What happens to my son's school? What happens to my wife's business? And then I started reading out those scenarios and then ended up with a realistic scenario, which was to do business and to do it in the US. Because I had a whole matrix of different places I can be, different things I can do. And then I drew a Gantt chart and cash flow analysis. How am I going to do all of this? And that planning helped so much that I was the fastest to go from signing the agreement to buy my franchise to launch, even though it had a visa change involved in between. I had to switch to a E2 investor visa. And I've since distributed that paper to many people who are going through similar life changes themselves. But that planning upfront and that Amazon approach of one-way door, two-way door, what are things we can do right away? What are things we need to think about? That was really helpful. And that paper projected that first week of November 2023, I should have my real estate license in place. And on 3rd November 2023, I got my license. So that's how much
Wow.
it flowed on clockwork, and all that planning at the front end really helped.
Planning is the most important thing. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Where do you go from here on? Like, continue at Amazon for the time being?
Yeah, I think I'm enjoying my gig here. No complaints, right? I love working for Amazon. And as you're saying that we're not only safety obsessed, like it's world class. Whatever you see here is one of the best. I've worked in different corporations. I can compare and I
Yeah,
have some idea. I haven't thought much. Maybe let's see. My kids are having their education here, right? And my wife is working. I'm working. We're enjoying our life in Nashville. Nashville is a very nice place if you especially love music. I love music, right? Two things: I love physics and I love music. Those are
yeah,
my passions, and I enjoy the life here. And although, if you ask me, my first love has always been Toronto and Canada. I still miss Toronto and Canada. Like
yeah,
nothing beats that life. Right. Let's see. Let's see. Maybe I'll be kind of a migratory bird moving, juggling between two places,
yeah.
north and south, in maybe 10 years from now. But for now, maybe in the future, for next couple of years, 5 years, 6 years, I don't see anything changing
Yeah.
so soon.
Yeah, and Amazon is big enough where if you get bored, you can just move to a different org or a different part of and do something completely different.
Yep.
I think the sheer just number of different professions that exist in Amazon is unbelievable. So I have a friend who's been in Amazon over 12 years. And he's like, every time I'm bored, every 3 years or so, I'll just change teams and go to a different org. It's unlimited what you can do there. With that, let's go into our second break. And when we return, we will talk about what advice Somnil has for new immigrants. So stay tuned for these messages. Welcome back to Diasporaa on KKNW, where we share interesting stories of first generation immigrants from South Asia. We are talking to Somnil Das. He's my ex supervisor and also a friend and Amazonian who's pulled off great things while working there. So I want to touch upon the immigrant experience of Canada and then US. Was the US move a lot easier for you given that it was with a company and you had already been in this part of the world?
Yeah, I think US move was pretty smooth. If you ask me, I didn't move with anything. I just
Yeah,
put my stuff in a U-Haul. I towed my car and I came driving. A 12 hours drive from
yeah,
Toronto to Nashville. It was pretty smooth. But move to Canada was challenging in the sense like I landed with two suitcases. My wife with two suitcases. So you
yeah,
cannot get your own personal stuff, right? So that was challenging enough. And then new country, everything like food habits, shops, market, everything is new, right? You have to go for a
Yeah,
driver's license.
yeah,
Basic things are missing. So I think, yeah, if you're moving from Canada to US, it's pretty
pretty,
easy. I
yeah.
don't think it's not a problem. Yeah.
I think because I had lived here as an undergrad student, I was used to a lot of things and they were not culture shocks. So my first move was a lot easier than it could have been for many people. Like, for example, I already knew how to drive on this side of the road. And I have friends who failed their driving test three, four, 5 times because it's a very different style of driving in India. Like, here you at the signs, there you're looking at the car in front of you and anticipating what they will do versus actually focusing on your own driving. When you landed, did you have any of these like moments where you saw something that was completely alien to you and it was like flabbergasting as to like what is this? Like how does this? For me, it was the small talk. Everybody talks to everybody. You have to say 5 things before you can actually start talking. And in India, small talk is not a thing, especially like you're on at a restaurant or whatever. If a waiter comes and says, "Hey, I'm Suresh. I'm going to take care of you today," I'll be like, "Why are you telling me your name?" So for me, that was a very odd thing. Now I think I'm used to it to the point where I actually like it. But did you have any such moments where you were completely caught off guard with something you saw?
Not off guard because I had some idea about what I'm going to see, right? I had some idea, like I did a lot of research and I knew that what is coming, right? Even watching thousands of videos every day on YouTube. What am I watching? Streets of Toronto. That's it. So I had some idea, right?
Yeah,
But something which came as a shocking, I wouldn't say nothing came as a shocking. I think I was pretty impressed by some of the practices and cultures. I'll give you one example which I really tell people, right? And coming from India, the kind of, like, what can I say, babu culture, we have this hierarchy, bureaucracy.
yeah,
Or I am the owner. I'm someone like you should be
yeah,
respecting all the time, right? And
yeah,
coming here, you see that your respect is through your work. Your respect is through what you do and contribute to the society,
yeah,
not by whose son or whose daughter you are, right?
yeah,
That's a very big practice we have in India, and that matters. So when I was working with this with Ford, right, my first 6 months here in Canada,
mm,
as I told you, it was a joint venture with this company, Multimatic, and Multimatic is actually a big company. It's $1 billion company who are into car racing. They make dampeners, they make a lot of shock absorbers, they have a lot of patents in
yeah,
that area, and Ford was collaborating and making those cars. And one day I go to the floor, right, and we used to make one car every day, and there was this engineers, there was those mechanics who were like, this was a very cool environment, although. And one day I see someone new who was working under the car, and I didn't know who that guy was. And later at the end of the day, I asked someone like, who's this guy was, and this person said, oh, he's the owner's son. I said, really? So I was humbled. I said, look, see, this guy is a son of a billionaire, but he doesn't boast about it. There's no air about it.
yeah,
He is going and working as a mechanic under the car, building the
yeah,
car, and then he has a desk with other mechanics to sit and work. He doesn't have a special big cabin like in India. You would have imagined like they would have a owner's son like that. So that was something which really impressed me. I was in a shock and I was really humble. I said, okay, I think I've come to the right place.
yeah. So I joined my family business. My first job was selling mutual funds door to door. And a lot of people in India were like, "It's your dad's company. Why are you doing all of this? And why don't you have a cabin on the top floor like your parents do?" And I was like, I wouldn't have it any other way. You have to learn from the ground up. And I think it took me a good 5 years before I had a cabin. And that was not on the top floor. It was just one of the cabins that comes with the designation that I had. At one time, I had a team of 1,100 people at the peak, and this was a nationwide sales team which we had built from scratch. But none of it was just given, which is, like you said, it's not common in India. In India, you come, you get that royal treatment from day one, and everybody knows
You
you
are
are the boss of
entitled.
something. Yeah, exactly. You're entitled to it. So for us, that message was very clear right from the start that you come in, you work based on what you're qualified to do, which as a 22-year-old, you're qualified to do door to door sales. That's it.
That's
And
how it
so,
should be.
yeah, and I'm very grateful that it went that way. Um, with now that you're in Nashville, do you notice subtle differences between Canada and the US? Even though the culture is so much similar, I always used to think Canada, what's the culture in Canada? It's just like the US. But once I lived there, I realized how different it is in so many ways. So anything that stood out for you?
No, I don't think anything particularly which stood out. I am enjoying it. I don't think there's like too much of a difference in terms of maybe there's a lot of more people because US is more populated than Canada. There are more
Yeah,
cars on the street,
yeah,
and there are a lot of like shopping malls. Canada doesn't have that much because
yeah,
market is smaller.
yeah.
And other than that, I don't see too much of a difference.
Uh,
Weather is slightly milder here compared to Toronto. That's
yeah.
also another difference.
I think that's probably because you're also coming from Toronto, which is the biggest city. Vancouver is that way much more laid back. I always say Toronto is a stockbroker and Vancouver is a yoga instructor in terms of the personalities of this. So I did notice that people are more business minded, like more to the point in the US. And I'm sure it's even more out east than it is in this part of the country. But Vancouver was super laid back. People are all about work life balance. And that's not the case with the US. People are much more business like here. You,
Vancouver is beautiful.
yeah.
Vancouver is serene. One of the best places I've seen so far.
Yeah, that's literally why we went there. We were moving for quality of life, and I said, what better place to go than Vancouver? I didn't know much about the city when I moved there. I had only been once for one day, and that is because we landed in Vancouver and took a cruise to Alaska the next day. So that was my
Wow.
to Vancouver, and my wife had never even been to Canada. So it was completely like a leap of faith for her. And the first day, I've mentioned this in a previous episode too, we reached our hotel by the airport and I opened the windows and I saw the North Shore Mountains with snow on them. And I was like, I think I'm in the right place. So it's definitely a very special place around the world. So if not Nashville, are there any other cities that you would like to live in the US?
I haven't given it a thought. Any other cities other than Nashville? Maybe I like Arizona. I know I like a lot of. I like to do a lot of astronomy. I have a kind of a professional telescope with me. I look. I spend hours, a lot of time going through videos, watching and upgrading my learning. This kind of a hobby.
Yeah.
I would love to go where there are clear skies. Like in Arizona, I went to Phoenix, Arizona, like one time. I
Yeah.
love the night sky there. So I mean, I've never lived in a desert. Maybe in future, if I get a chance, I would love to go there
I was
and live some time.
recently
Yeah.
at the Zion National Park in Utah and is designated as a dark sky park. So you have stargazing activities around the park. But unfortunately, all the days we were there, it was cloudy, so we didn't get any. Because my dad loves astronomy too, and we have it at our home in India, actually at our farmhouse, because it's out in the countryside in Gujarat,
Mm.
and the sky is much clearer than Bombay. You can't really see anything. I know you as a person with very interesting hobbies. So, what are some of the other things that you like and that keep you busy outside of work?
I like reading a lot about the recent development in physics and science. More about my inquisitiveness is like, what is reality really about? What is it going around here? What is the existence? What is consciousness? Like, what is all this matter, energy floating around? Like, what is the basic thing of starting building block of life or building block of universe? All these things really excite me, and I keep investing my time whenever I can, reading stuff, watching videos, talking to people. I've actually been to some science shows there. There are like Professor Brian Greene was in Toronto. I went in one of his talks there with my younger son. He's also kind of a bit science enthusiast because of me.
Yeah.
But I love all this, and then music, like any kind of music you ask me, and especially disco music. I love disco music, right? And I keep enjoying different genres time to time, right? Not a big fan of hip hop and reggae. Some of them I like, but overall I like music and any instrumental. Sometimes I'll listen. You'll find me like listening. Well, mostly I listen to music when I'm driving or at home when I'm relaxing. Even if I'm a bit sad, also I love listening to music.
I remember in one of our team building activities, it emerged that you're a fan of opera music. And that's not something you see a lot of Indian people get interested in. So, what got you into opera music?
Again, experimentation, right? Experimentation. So what is music? Music is nothing but sound which has got a mathematical pattern, and it is going and hitting your nerves, which is again
Yeah.
catching that wave, and then it is also vibrating in that mathematical pattern, and that excites your consciousness, and that's how you like music. So anything, if it excites you, it doesn't have to be. Opera also has its own beauty. If you see the way the voice is modulated or oscillate, it's a lot of talent. First of all, you need to be really have strong lungs to scream at your voice like that. Plus there is some melody I find in listening to that beautiful shrill voice at a pitch of the tone and the various modulations. I think it's pretty interesting and pretty soothing at times. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll say.
that's a very interesting take. The last thing I want to cover before we go into our weekly segments is what advice do you have for new immigrants who are coming to Canada today? And I want to focus on Canada because that's where the big wave of immigration is. So, what advice would you have for those people to be successful and to assimilate quickly and things that a lot of immigrants miss out on because no one tells them these things?
Yeah, I'll say right now with the technology, different platforms you have on internet, everything is there. First thing is planning. As I said, I started planning almost a year and a half before I came to Canada, right? And
Yeah,
as I said, I was Canada was living in my mind a year before I landed, right? I was doing everything every day. My day was focused like that. How does it happen? If you have not visited Canada before, if you come from India, you will face some cultural challenges. You will face certain things which you will not be prepared for. So all these things which you are planning right now, you're preparing for the unknown so that it's easy for you to transition. Correct. I also got a driving license like in one go, and I got a full G license because I had my experience, and it
mm,
was not easy to unlearn and relearn driving whatever you
sure.
learned there. So you got to train your mind, and you have to understand that these things are there. If you're not prepared, it's going to be challenged, and you're going to be clearing it in the fourth or fifth attempt because you didn't train it.
Yeah,
So I'll say start preparing, start devoting time, read a lot, watch videos. Like when I came 10 years back in 2015, of course internet was there, there were things there, there were contents there on the internet. Right now there are more,
yeah,
right? And talk to people. Like I joined a professional network staying in India who were professionals in Canada, and a lot of people I reached out, they responded. There are people who respond, and there are people who are ready to mentor you,
yeah,
right? And you should start making those connections because connections help in this country. If you want a job, you need
yeah,
connections, right? And
yeah,
professional connections. It's not that, oh, you are from my state, okay, let's connect. No, it's because are you
yeah,
working? It's a professional, it's a very professional field. It's not like your casual friends,
yeah,
right? And you're mixing with them, that they are also, it's like a win-win situation. Sometimes they will help you, you have to help them, and that's how you build the trust, and that's how you go on, right?
yeah,
So those are the things. And also you have to come with a frame of mind that you are not entitled for anything. You might be a big deal back home because you're a big manager and you're a big boss and you've got 50 people and there's someone
yeah,
who's giving you tea, coffee every day.
yeah,
Just forget it when you come here. Just
yeah,
forget it. Be humble, be by yourself and ready to do everything by yourself. Even if you have to broom your office, you have to do it. It's your office. Nobody's
yeah,
going to come and do it here,
yeah,
right? So come with that mindset, and it takes time. It's really, if you spend 30 years in a country with that culture and you suddenly land
sure.
up here, you will go to a cultural shock, and it will be like you will go into there. I think different 3 or 4 stages of immigration. I was reading somewhere. So do that. And there's a good book I'll recommend to everyone. Nick Nurani. I don't know how many of you
Yeah,
have
I
heard
know
his
Nick.
name.
I know Nick. I've
Okay.
spoken to him as well.
Okay, so Nick
Yeah,
Nurani has a book called Arrival, Survival, Canada. Please read that.
yeah,
And I don't know, I think I ordered the book through Amazon when I was in India. It took
yeah,
me 2 months to come at that time. I think it is faster available now. You can, I think
yeah,
it might be available in Kindle digital edition. So just order it, just read that book,
yeah,
and there are a lot of other books which are there. And also, the government of Canada, by the way, spends millions of dollars every year
yeah,
to help new immigrants settle. There are a lot of programs which
yeah,
run.
yeah,
You one should go and research, right? If you're coming to Ontario, I think there's a website for government of Ontario where you can go, or the federal government has some websites where you can go, and there are a lot of links. There are a lot of agencies who are getting funded to help new
yeah,
immigrants settle down. So just
yeah.
go reach out to them. There are online courses you can take sitting in India, like a lot of things you can have in you. But
Yeah.
starting
Uh,
point is all plan well.
Nick Nurani is a very well-known person in Canadian
Yep.
immigration, and I think he started the first or one of the first companies that works with the government for exactly what you said, is to help settle. And I think in every city in the public libraries, there's a new immigrant resource center where they help you with your resume, they help you with getting information about different types of jobs and what licenses are required and all of that fun stuff. So, with that, let's go into our weekly segment. Can we spin the wheel, please? So, this is a new segment which we haven't done before, and it's called How's That? And How's That is what cricketers shout when they are appealing to the umpire about an out decision. So, Somnil, do you have any favorite cricket memories of India? Most of us are crazy cricket fans, and we all do. Any special moments that you can describe ball by ball what happened and whether you were at the stadium or watching it on TV?
I can tell you one incident. I don't know whether I told you this incident, but I played a lot of cricket when I was in the military. I played for the Eastern Command team as well, which is
Hmm.
the Eastern Army of Indian Army, and
Yeah,
I was a left-arm fast bowler, right? And a lot of
me
cricket I used to
too.
play.
I wouldn't call myself fast, but left arm medium fast. Yeah,
Okay, yeah, left arm fast, and I was terrible with batting. Right, I
yeah,
used to be like
same.
get out with the first one or two balls. But I was because of left arm fast, I earned some name, and I used to swing the ball a lot, left way, in swinging, out swingers. So I was good
Yeah.
at that. And then I played for the military. My dream was when I played in Eden Gardens.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I played in the Eden Gardens with Hong Kong Bank. There was some match which was going on. I'm forgetting the trophy name. There was some Eastern Command trophy. Yeah, the Eastern Command trophy we were playing. And during that time, I made one of the cricketers there. He
Yeah.
was there in Eden Gardens, and we spent a good amount of time talking. We didn't have digital cameras at that time. I wish I could photo frame
Yeah.
him, but that was one of the memorable moments. And more than meeting Amarnath, I think playing in the Eden Gardens for the
Oh
first
yeah.
time, I
Yeah.
think that was like the ground is huge. It is pretty good, and when you go
Yeah.
and take a play there, you really know that these guys who hit a six, they are really
Oh
good
yeah.
at it. They are really
Yeah.
good at it.
Yeah. So this is a unique experience because it's not a memory of a match you saw on TV of India winning something, but it's a match that you actually played. So that's great. And also for our listeners, Eden Gardens is one of the great cricket stadiums of the world. It probably was the first one to fit 100,000 people.
100,000. Yep.
And the environment in Eden Gardens is unparalleled anywhere in the world. So to have played in that is super special. So with that, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you for listening to Diaspora. We hope you enjoyed hearing Somnil's very unique and interesting story. Remember to check out our show notes for links and more information about the topics discussed in today's episode. You can find Diaspora on all major podcast platforms and can subscribe to our channel on YouTube. If you like this episode, consider following us on Instagram or leaving us a 5-star review. Diaspora is part of the Staying Power network of shows and podcasts, all of which are dedicated to inspiring listeners to build lives of meaning, connection, and value. You can find the Staying Power network of shows wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back next week with another interesting story from the South Asian diaspora. And until then, take care and stay curious. And Somnil, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Eddie. Thanks for having me.